Hey guys, this is Ray from Emulated Gaming, and today I'm going to be showing you a DPS build for the Barbarian on Diablo 3. It's called the Whirlwind Barb build, and I did not come up with this myself. I actually learned it from a guy who does YouTubing and live streaming. His name is Creparian. He streams Diablo 14 hours a day or something like that, maybe 12, and he is the first person to beat Diablo on Inferno on hardcore difficulty. An amazing feat. Gamed really hard for that title right there. But anyway, he came up with this build. I don't think, actually, he did not come up with this build. This is where I found this build, and he said he got it from someone else, and I don't know where he got it from. But anyway, before we get started with this, I'm going to talk about some other stuff dealing with items and whatnot. What you're going to want is high critical hit chance and damage, because Into the Fray from Battle Rage has a chance to generate 15 additional fury, which in turn will allow you to spam Battle Rage and Sprint. Sprint with Run Like the Wind will be doing most of your damage for this build. And don't worry, I didn't forget about the other skills. I'm just doing this in the order that I think makes the most sense. The Run Like the Wind tornadoes are going to be causing critical hit damage, which will in turn grant more fury. So you can use Whirlwind. Whirlwind will create more critical hits because I have more than 50% critical hit damage, which will in turn be getting more fury. If I pop Wrath of the Berserker, every 25 fury I gained will increase the length of Wrath of the Berserker by 1 second. And if I'm in Wrath of the Berserker, I get plus 10 critical hit chance, which is in turn more than 60% critical hit, plus attack speed, plus movement speed. So, with that said, more critical hits will be spawning in terms of this, which means more fury gained. More fury gained means a longer Wrath of the Berserker, which means more time to kill mobs. These abilities, Bash, Warcry, and the passives are more used for when you're not whirlwinding, I guess you can say. Bash is going to be used for single target damage if you don't have a lot of mobs near you. Obviously, you're going to need a lot of mobs if you're going to be using this build. If there's like maybe 1 or 2, maybe 3 people, you're not really going to be using Whirlwind and Sprint and Battle Rage to waste all your fury on like three creatures. So Bash is good for taking out champions that are alone, or maybe you just need some extra fury. Warcry for defensive capability, and also Fury Generator. Nerves of Steel, again for increased armor. Ruthless for critical hit chance as well as damage. And Weapon Master because you're going to want mace or axe in your on hand, or primary, whatever you want to call it. So it gives you in turn a plus 10% critical hit chance. So, as you can tell, critical hit chance very important in this build. Now, in terms of gear, you're going to want something like this. Similar. I mean, you can find stuff definitely better than this. You're going to want something with critical hit damage, armor if you can get it, all resists, strength, or vitality. Sometimes you're not going to get all of those in one piece of gear because the price is too much or whatever. But you're going to want a lot of strength. And you're going to want to have about mid 40k life. I mean, I'm a little low right now, but if you have good enough defensive stats, you should be able to survive. Crip said that you need about 800 all resist and about 8500 armor to be completely viable, I guess you can say. I mean, you could still die, obviously, if you face a tough champ pack, but you shouldn't be dying from mobs. I mean, I still die from mobs because my gear is pretty crappy right now. I'm working on it. Because, again, some of this gear doesn't have all resist, which is really essential to this build if you're going to want to survive, as well as armor bonus. I mean, this is, like I said, this is what you're going to want. You're going to want all resist, strength or vitality, armor, critical hit. And you're going to want to get critical hit anywhere you can, whether that be glove, helmet, amulet, bracer, or ring. And weapons on hand, you're going to want something that's slow, like a mace or an axe. Again, going back to weapon mastery, you're gonna want that 10% more critical hit damage. And for a primary, you're going to want a high DPS weapon. I'd say about 1k. I mean, I got this for like 200k because I'm kind of low on funds, as you can see. But you're gonna want something that has about 1k DPS with critical hit damage increased by at least 80% as a roll, or a socket, so you can put a gem in it to increase your critical hit damage. I mean, that's either or. You don't want both because the price will go really high. If you have those kind of funds, you can feel free to spend them. I haven't checked the auction house in a while, so I don't know if actually high DPS with critical hit damage with a socket is a lot of money, but I'm pretty sure it is. So if you're probably just gonna want to get a socket or the critical hit damage increased by whatever. That's it for primary. Pretty easy. Offhand, this is going to be your stat weapon. Kind of low DPS, so the price doesn't get out of hand. I'd say 600. Like, that's what Crip had, so I don't know. This is fine for me. But this is what you're going to want. So you're going to want strength. You're going to want life on hit, and you're going to want critical hit damage increased as a stat and as a socket. Okay, they're going to be costing a lot of money if there's a high DPS, so that's why I suggested sticking to a low DPS kind of weapon and a fast one. So you're probably going to want a dagger like I have here. You're going to want kind of high strength. I wouldn't say anything less than 80. I mean, you can find stuff that has like 200 on the auction house, but you're going to want at least 700 life on hit if you're looking for a decently good one. I mean, again, like I bought this for 200,000. I'm kind of on a budget here. You're going to want critical hit damage increased by at least 80, I would like to say, plus a socket with a good enough gem that gives you another 80%. That's what you're going to look for an offhand. Like I said, it's going to be used mainly for stats. And that is why you want a high DPS in your primary, and offhand you're going to want something fast. I will explain that in a moment. Give me just a sec. Just to focus on something now. You see that I have a 1.2 attack speed, or attack per second, and this one has 1.5. Now, I'm not sure right now what's giving me the extra attacks per second, but if you look that I have bash, it switches every time I attack. And my frames per second is dropping really bad right now. I'm sorry for this. Hold on, let me see if I can get it to unlag itself. Nope. It's still lagging. Alright. I'm sorry about that. I don't know, my frames per second just dropped. But if you see that every time I use bash, attacks per second change. I'm going to use Whirlwind for like a brief second because this doesn't give me enough fury to use Whirlwind for that long, but you're going to see that it changes very quickly. Okay, so you saw how Whirlwind changed the attack speed. And 2 high DPS weapons will cause your fury to drain very quickly. So you're going to want a slow primary and a decently fast offhand weapon. And I say that damage doesn't really matter on your offhand because Whirlwind is going to be taking the damage of your primary and taking the attack speed of both your primary and your offhand. For sprint around like the wind, the tornadoes are going to be doing the damage of your primary, and the amount of tornadoes spawn depends on your haste. So your offhand weapon isn't really anything good for anything except for stats, or if you're using bash, but preferably you're going to want stats on your offhand, because you don't really need anything else besides attack speed. And that's why I say you need a stat weapon as your offhand. Okay. About haste, you're going to spawn 4 tornadoes without any haste. I think whatever Wrath of the Berserker gives you, 20, it's going to spawn a 5th tornado, and if you have, I don't know how much else, you might be able to spawn a 6th tornado. I don't know, but with increased haste, you're able to spawn more tornadoes than 4.
You are probably right.
Now, before I end this video, there's one more thing I want to talk about, and that is life steal. Having none compared to some is a big difference according to Crip. He says life steal is very valuable if you have none. I mean, he said it's not something you should be stacking. Like, you should really be stacking more life on hit, because the life steal doesn't really work well with Whirlwind and the tornadoes. They don't really do much for you. And if you want to check out, he has a video on this too. He can explain this better than I can, and yeah, he explains why life steal isn't really as good as life on hit, but it's good to have, definitely, because you're doing so much damage per second. And he has like 1300 life per hit, but he only has like 2.8%, and I mean, he says that's made a really big difference for him, so I'm probably gonna get something that gives me life steal. But that's gonna be it for this video, guys. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.